Welcome back to the Weekly Education Pulse. I'm Sami.
And I'm Tony. Each week we bring to you the stories and insights shaping the international schools market around the world.
Yeah, in this episode we're heading across 3 continents in the news, from Asia's evolving bilingual landscape to the Middle East's newest education frontier and Europe's ongoing wave of lifestyle-led school development.
And after the news, we'll dive into another one of my articles, Is Education's Divide Widening? Looking at how global education is splitting between exclusivity and access, from India's ultra-premium boarding schools to Australia's affordable curriculum exports and the US visa policy debate, reshaping teacher recruitment.
Well, let's get started as we've got plenty to dig into. And we start this week in Hong Kong, where Pao School, one of Shanghai's most respected bilingual schools, has announced plans to open a new campus in September 2026.
That's right, the new school will mark Pao's first international expansion, bringing its bilingual, bicultural model to Hong Kong. It's designed to offer both Chinese national curriculum and the IB diploma, taught in English and Mandarin.
Yeah, Pao has built a strong reputation in mainland China for balancing Chinese heritage with international perspectives, a model that's proving increasingly attractive across Asia.
And this move signals how China's leading private education institutions are becoming exporters of educational influence, not just recipients. Hong Kong's education market has always been globally connected, but this introduces a new player with deep roots in Chinese bilingual philosophy.
And the timing's interesting too. Hong Kong's international schools market has matured in recent years with strong competition from established brands like Nord Anglia, ESF, and Harrow, but also increasing demand from local families looking for bilingual and culturally balanced options.
And that's an important point. The pandemic years really created some volatility in Hong Kong's enrolments, but confidence has been returning. We're now seeing both local and mainland investors reinvesting in high quality, internationally recognized schooling within the city.
Yeah, the Pao brand carries prestige, academically strong, well-governed, and highly respected by Chinese and international families alike. Its entry into Hong Kong reflects a wider trend of regionalization, where Asian education providers are stepping into new markets across the region.
So in essence, this is more than just a school opening. It's a symbolic moment in the shifting geography of international education. Hong Kong, long a bridge between East and West, is now becoming a space where regional education brands from mainland China can compete alongside global operators.
And that tells us a lot about how international education is evolving, not as a one-way flow from West, but a genuinely multipolar exchange of ideas and influence.
And from East Asia to the Middle East now, where Spain's SEK Education Group is set to open its first international school in Saudi Arabia's Red Sea region in partnership with Red Sea Global.
Yeah, this is a landmark project. The new SEK International School Red Sea will open in September 2026, serving both Saudi and expat families within the Red Sea Global Development Zone, one of the kingdom's flagship projects under Vision 2030.
And it's another example of how education is being built into Saudi Arabia's new urban and tourism infrastructure. Red Sea Global is positioning itself as a world-class destination, and the presence of top-tier international school is key to attracting talent and long-term residents.
Yeah, SEK Education Group already operates in several different regions. We can look at Spain, France, Qatar, and even Ireland, and it's known for its bilingual and IB-based approach. So this new campus will add both credibility and diversity to Saudi Arabia's education portfolio.
What stands out is that SEK will be the first school group to establish a campus in the Red Sea region. It's a bold move into a completely new area that until recently had no residential communities or schooling options.
Yeah, and it speaks to Saudi Arabia's long-term planning. As the Red Sea and NEOM projects continue to grow, education has been seen not as an afterthought, but as a foundational enabler of sustainable communities.
What's unfolding here is a model of integrated development, schools being planned in tandem with housing, healthcare, and tourism infrastructure. That's a major shift from the old model of education following urbanization.
Yeah, and it shows how the international schools market is evolving too. We're seeing operators like SEK, Cognita, and Aldar entering not just established cities, but new master plan zones where the next generation of families will live and work.
So while the YK Pao story reflects Asia's regional influence, this one shows how the Gulf is shaping education's physical geography, literally building schools into the blueprint of new cities.
A perfect example of how education and nation building are becoming inseparable in the region. And finally, this week to Europe, where a brand new international school has officially opened in the Algarve region of Portugal.
Yes, that's right. The International School of Lagoa, located in the coastal town of Lagoa, welcome its first students. It offers a British curriculum pathway, beginning with primary and expanding into secondary in the coming years.
Yeah, the Algarve has become one of Europe's fastest growing hubs for international schooling. Population shifts, remote work, migration, and surge of expat families, particularly from Northern Europe, are driving sustained demand for quality English medium education.
Over the last 5 years, the number of international schools in Portugal has grown, especially in Lisbon and the Algarve. So, as the country's golden visa program and tax incentives have attracted globally mobile professionals.
Yeah, the new school in Lagoa aims to fill a gap in provision for that central Algarve corridor between the well-established international schools of Albufeira and Lagos. It's another sign that demand is spreading beyond Portugal's capital into smaller lifestyle destinations.
What's interesting is how Portugal's schools are diversifying. We're now seeing a mix of traditional British curriculum, bilingual models, and international schools offering the IB, catering to both expatriate and local Portuguese families seeking global university pathways.
Yeah, the Lagoa opening also reflects broader investor confidence. Educational development in the Algarve is being supported not just by expat demand, but by local entrepreneurs reinvesting in community-based schooling.
So while the Gulf and Asia might dominate headlines for scale, Portugal represents something different: sustainable, lifestyle-driven growth rooted in demographic change.
Exactly, and it's a reminder that the international schools market isn't just expanding, it's diversifying geographically, responding to new patterns of mobility and migration. And that wraps up this week's news. And there's an interesting thread running through all those stories: expansion, ambition, and access. Which brings us nicely to your latest article, Tony. Is education divide widening? What inspired you to write this piece?
Thanks, Sami. What struck me is how across very different regions, you've got India, Australia, the United States, we're seeing the same underlying tensions emerge. Access versus exclusivity. In some places, education is becoming more luxurious and aspirational, while elsewhere it's been reshaped around affordability and inclusion. The gap between those two worlds seems to be widening.
Hmm. Yeah, you started by mentioning India there, where you described British style boarding schools becoming lifestyle statements for the ultra wealthy. What's driving that trend?
And it's partly cultural and partly economic. India's wealthy families, especially those with international exposure or those returning from overseas, want global prestige without sending their children abroad. So we're seeing schools modelled on Eton and Harrow competing. They've got golf courses, equestrian facilities, spas, even wellness centres. These schools are less about education as a public good and more about education as a brand experience.
Yeah, that's fascinating. The symbolism of global success, but delivered locally. And you point out that while these schools flourish, the mid-market actually remains underserved.
Exactly. Premium education in India has entered a new phase. It's not just academic excellence anymore, it's lifestyle and exclusivity. Yet that success story highlights the divide. Families who can't afford international tuition still want quality, bilingual, globally relevant schooling. And that's where systems like the Western Australian curriculum come in.
Right, and that's your second case study was Australia's waste program expanding across India. You describe it as the third pillar of international education alongside the UK and US.
And the Western Australian Certificate of Education offers a globally recognised but affordable option. It aligns with India's national education policy, which focuses on skills, inquiry, and flexibility. And what's clever about this model is that it's in its structure, it's scalable for schools, and it's much more accessible for families. If it succeeds, Australia could emerge as a serious K-12 education exporter, and India become kind of the proving ground for that approach.
So within one country, we're seeing both extremes, luxury education at the top and accessible modular education for the middle. That contract almost defines the global challenge, doesn't it?
It really does. The global education ecosystem is splitting along economic lines. On one end, education is aspirational. On the other, just about access. So we're seeing that same pattern play out in Western contexts too. Now, most dramatically in the US with the proposed $100,000 visa fee for international teachers.
Yeah, that proposal has shocked quite a lot of people. What does it tell us about how policy can amplify inequality in education?
Well, many US school districts, especially in rural and low-income states, depend on international teachers to fill roles, particularly STEM and world languages. If the visa costs rise to $100,000 per applicant, those pipelines disappear. Schools will just not be able to cover those costs, which ineffectively turns immigration policy into an equity issue.
So wealthier schools keep their international diversity while others lose access to global expertise, deepening an already existing divide.
Exactly. And it would create a two-tier system, not only across borders, but within countries. The risk is that quality education becomes even more dependent on institutional wealth.
We also argue that disruption can force innovation, that schools may use a shock like this to rethink recruitment and delivery models.
Yeah, crisis often accelerate change. We could see districts experiment with shared staffing models, hybrid learning, or new teacher training pipelines. It's not ideal, but it might prompt overdue innovation in how education systems build resilience.
So the bigger story here isn't just about inequality, it's about adaptability, whether it's India's market where between luxury and affordability, or America's visa challenges, schools that can evolve creatively will be the ones that bridge the divide.
That's right. The question isn't simply, is the divide widening? It's whether we can respond fast enough to narrow it through innovation, collaboration, and more inclusive thinking about what global education actually means.
Brilliant book, Tony. That's a thought-provoking read and a reminder that progress in education is never evenly distributed, but it can be more equitable if we're intentional about it.
And that's it for this week's Weekly Education Pulse.
Thanks for joining us as we explore new developments across Hong Kong, Saudi Arabia and Portugal, and how these reflect the evolving shape of international education worldwide.
In our feature discussion, we looked at the growth contrast across the sector from India's luxury schools to Australia's scalable model, and how the US visa policy could reshape access to global talent.
It's a reminder that progress in education is uneven, but never static. Every shift, whether it's market expansion, curriculum innovation or policy change, creates opportunities for schools to rethink what access and equity really mean.
Don't forget to like, share and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes.
I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where do you see the biggest divides emerging in education and how are schools bridging them? Drop a comment below.
And we'll be back next week with more global updates and insights from across the international school sector.
Until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.